the world of business is shifting faster than ever. Markets are unpredictable. Technology is rewriting industries, and people are demanding more purposeful leadership. It's no longer just about staying profitable, it's about staying relevant, resilient, and responsible. For leaders, this moment calls for a new kind of direction, one that blends adaptability with integrity and innovation with inclusion. We have joining us now Baba Yusuf. He is the Group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company. He joins me now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, a pleasure. So when everything for a business is changing, is shifting from the policies, the markets, consumer behavior, what does effective leadership look like?
Well, thank you. The key word there to encompass all you mentioned is disruption. Because globally we are facing a lot of socio-economic headwinds, geopolitics, and sub-regional also disruptions. We have the issue in the Sahel region, the insecurity in the country. And of course, this is not novel for this time we are living in. The world is dynamic, and consistently there will be disruptions that will come. And of course, that is why leadership is key, even in the animal kingdom. Now, the capacity, competence, and the confidence of the leaders at a particular time is what determines the stay power of that institution, organization, or society, as the case may be, to remain, keyword again, sustainable. If I pick the three keywords, that is the theme of this year's Nigeria Chartered Institute of Directors, you hear sustainability, you hear inclusivity, you hear leading and change. These four keywords are the cornerstones that drive the conversation for this year. And this should be part of the qualities or characteristics of the kind of leaders that will make the difference, as the case may be, in any organization or indeed any society.
And you've highlighted a key word there that brings us to the next question, sustainability. It's thrown around a lot now and aligns with global best practices. But moving beyond it just being a buzzword, how can companies actually incorporate it to being part of their culture and a reality than just a keyword or a buzzword?
Thank you for calling it a buzzword, because for most organizations, and indeed, even countries is as bad as that. Use it as a buzzword for campaigns, use it as a buzzword for selling brands and for marketing. At GITC, actually, we made it part of our values. At GITC, optimizing value chains and then sustainability is key. Well, for any organization that doesn't just want to thrive, but to outstay turbulent times and to also upscale during what you call the lull period, they must be sustainable. Sustainability is what drives growth and development. All right, getting the flashes and the pan profits, after tax or before tax for a year, 1 year, 2, fantastic. But what takes you 10 years ahead to stay profitable, to stay relevant in the scheme of things and competitive is sustainability. And that is why at GITC, we did a research and said, why is it that, for example, in Nigeria, almost 65 to 70% of organizations or companies do not last beyond that threshold of 25 years? They evaporate. Whether it is in the food industry, whether it is in FCMGs, apart from the big players like the Dangotes and others have gone into the archives of history because you take sustainability. Because year 1, year 2, all the customers are coming, all is going well with you, so you don't believe you need to upscale or plan for sustainability or for shocks or for risks. And that is why I think the IOD, Institute of Directors, decided to have this conversation. That's where governance comes into play, which is a key cornerstone of IOD, to provide that governance. Leadership has different facets. Governance is in the center. You have leadership, you have governance. Under leadership, you have governance, you have management, and all that. Now, governance is what drives the organization, what determines that the culture that has been agreed to and the values should remain. They are the ones to manage the risks of the companies, to anticipate and to ensure that the risk appetite of the company is not too over or is not too low, and to ensure that all the things are done in a responsible manner now to take from the words you mentioned earlier, so that we ensure that people are doing responsible business, right? There's a thin line between doing responsible business and then undertaking economic sabotage, paying your taxes, paying your staff, all the requisite and relevant compensation and reward system, and also giving back to society.
And I hear you say that building leadership that lasts aligns with one of the sub-themes today,
Yes.
Ensuring that a company survives beyond just the founder. Founders come and go. You highlighted that 25 years is the average for most companies. So what do you, besides governance, you've talked about besides governance, what would you say is key in ensuring that continuity of a business beyond the founder?
Okay, now to backtrack to the 25 years, it's not like it's a threshold. What I'm saying that it is a common knowledge, not encrusted as a law, but a company that exists for 25 years becomes an institution. Now, what I'm saying is most companies in Nigeria hardly reach those number of years. And for those that reach those number of years, die with the founders, right? Now, governance is so important because governance is what will even determine your hiring process, that you hire the right people to lead from CEO level to management level. And also, how are you able to nurture new leadership within that organization or without, where you need to bring in added value? How are you able to ensure that within that organization, people can say in the next 3, 4, 5 years where they would be in that organization to ensure you retain talents and skills and commitment for the organization, right? To be able to sense also the either political, social, and other factors that drive the business, including government policies, to ensure that what you do at that governance level, ensure that you hire the right kind of leaders. Now you're talking about leadership, whether it is senior, middle, or even on the shop floor. Whether you are an entity that wants to say within the next 25 or 30 years or 10 years, we want somebody from the shop floor to get to the apex, of that organization. A typical example is the current president of the Chartered Institute of Directors, who started, his career within the oil and gas industry in Mobile, almost at the low cadre. You can see how his trajectory of professionalism went and took him to the top level. And then after he left, that entity that is ExxonMobil has now become a Nigerian entity and is at the apex of that organization. That is culture configuration, at governance level, to ensure also you protect the business, the reputation of the business, the people that work for the business is all crafted at that governance level. That is why I keep on going back to it, because indeed this is an IOD's Institute of Directors conference. But of course, leadership also, like I always say, people that know me in the media, I have this thing I wrote in my book that I call the leadership value chain. Now, at that top level, that is the board of directors, which has the chair and everybody, they are only as good as the leadership value chain in that organization, starting from the receptionist. The impression I have of a new central is when I walk into this particular, set, how everybody behaves, how everybody comes across, tells me a lot about the DNA of that organization, of the people within that organization. And it is a reflection of the leadership of that organization. If directors have that in their consciousness, they will be interested in what is going on with the cleaner, what is going on with the manager, and what is going on with a Joanna who is anchoring the program, in terms of the psychology, the sociology, and also the performance of that person within the framework of the organization. They are very key in ensuring what? Sustainability. And of course, further down the line, we can also discuss about what is key to sustainability is succession and succession planning. And when we talk about succession planning, people think about, okay, who's the next CEO in the next 5 years? You hear it in the banking industry, there's a lot of it. Banks that are forward-thinking always have a deputy managing director, or almost everybody knows in the next 2-3 years who is going to be the next, most likely the CEO. But it goes beyond that. Succession planning should be as far down the radar as the shop floor. People should aspire, and people should also, you should have a template for people also to step in, whether due to shocks or as a deliberate cultural value orientation of that organization. And indeed, the society, when we talk about the federal government or the state government, you see the policy somersaults, you see the inconsistencies that we have that has been taking us back. It appears as a country we make 3 steps forward, 2 steps backwards, because there is a disconnect or lack of understanding of what the governance framework of a country should be. Yesterday, I took a listen to what Mr. Collard mentioned, the managing director of Sahara, and he gave a case study of Singapore. Incidentally, at other fora, I get a lot of case studies of Singapore. And what that tells you is, ab initio, as a structure, as a governance framework, there must be a deliberateness to ensure sustainability, to ensure if Mallam Baba Yusuf becomes the president today, because Joanna was president yesterday, I'm not going to throw the entire policies away. These are part and parcel of governance. And I will land with this. We should also remember, while we are discussing as directors or as a country, that actually the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the governance Bible.
So stay in line.
So that should be well crafted for those that are looking for the overhaul of the Constitution and this 10 kobo, rehabilitation, if you like, or whatever amendment of the Constitution, whereas you have fundamental issues on the Constitution, speaks volume as regards what kind of governance framework do you have as a nation? Does it have the capacity? Does it have the state power to cater for those that you need to take the country to a $1 million or $1 trillion economy in X years, for example?
So a lot definitely still needs to be done. But you've hinted at another, I would say, buzzword, inclusion. What does that look like in practice, not just theory? Because again, it's another word that's thrown around. How can we ensure that it's practiced from the boardroom to the factory floor?
Well, and also I would still include, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. We put a lot of premium in the private sector. And when we have this kind of sessions, we believe it's a private sector thing. It is time for Nigeria to be driven like a private entity, Joanna. When that sensitivity and that consciousness goes into the culture of public practice, you'll have the right people leading, you have the right people governing, you have the right governance frameworks formulated. That being said, now, let us, like I agree, inclusion is a lip service word, right? Now, inclusion to what extent? Inclusion is multidimensional. Is it based on gender? Is it based on the ecosystem of business? Is it based on sector by sector? What are the priorities? If I contextualize it from the private sector perspective in an organization, one of the key ones I use, which is very important to me, is gender inclusivity. Very important to say, what is the deliberateness in your cultural formulations? And I will tell you, a lot of entities are guilty of this. We take it for granted. When it matters, we pay the service, but there's a serious gender imbalance. Whereas studies have shown, and from experience I have seen, that we have fantastic leaders, that come from female gender. And there are researchers that have shown you that there are some particular key top-line roles that the female drive more than the male. By default, by structure, by design, by DNA, for example. So an entity that recognizes that and provides a level playing field for gender inclusivity is an entity that will be growing, that will be successful, and that will be sustainable. And indeed, that goes also to public sector, whether it is subnational or at the federal level. Inclusivity also should go beyond that to talk about sector by sector or the ecosystem. For example, 80% of our economy is driven by the informal sector. And to that extent, you can now framework it and talk about the nano, small, medium scale enterprises. How are we as directors of multinationals or big corporations that are providing those supports, whether directly or indirectly? For example, Dangote is bestriding FCMG, and you have a lot of arteries, if you like, and ventricles. It's like a heart that supplies and pumps into the economy. 70% of the people that drive Dangote's, conglomerate are the informal sector. From the dealership that goes down to the person that even breaks the sack of the cement and sells it, in Moodus, for example. How are we as an entity, or how are we as entities able to craft a corporate structure that will identify those and include them in our business strategy, which will actually ensure our growth and sustainability? And that is why the big players are playing the way they are playing, and they are sustainable. And that is why some of their competitors have died long time ago.
Yes, it's the survival of the fittest.
And then survival of the wise ones.
Wisest as well. All right.
It's actually survival of the wise ones than the fittest now, because it's not about size, right? It's not just about capacity. It's about intuition. It's about sensing and proactiveness.
Indeed. Let's come to matters of trust now. And how would you say the lack of trust in an organization, a company, has affected the culture, right? That's trust between the boardroom and employees, investors, customers, consumer. How integral is it? And how can that be driven from the boardroom to investors, employees, and so on?
Thank you very much for that question. Having been, in practice for over 30 years, and I mean, starting from a small scale and sitting on the board, I tell you, this is a very important question, because the people at the top level, we that are in the board, either as chairs or members or CEOs, most of the time take things for granted, especially in an emerging economy like Nigeria. The board is like a group of some demigods or witches or wizards, and that believe that whatever they say should become law. Trust is a very sensitive word that is a two-way traffic, Joanna. Leaders that know what it means ensure that they build the trust from top to bottom, not bottom up. That somebody that is working in an organization, or indeed somebody that is a citizen of a country, knows that if that person does the right thing, the compensation or reward or recognition, or indeed, most importantly, protection comes as automatic. You don't need to beg for it. You don't need to lobby for it, right? And you know that is done. And even if something happens to you, know that, as they say colloquially, they have your back. That should be inculcated at the top line level, at governance level, by the directors, by the board of directors, and it should sink down to, that's why you see some organizations, you see the staff working for the organization as if the organization is theirs. You see people fighting for their country, either at the battlefield or in the economic ecosystem, as if they own that organization. Now, sense of ownership comes when trust from top to bottom meets trust from bottom up. And you have a synergy of trust. What are the factors? What are the drivers of trust? What initiate trust? And that is why also buzzwords, you see people, if you go to GITC, you see our values, you see integrity, you see respect for the individual, and you even see sometimes trust. There are things that drive the trust as a value, that initiate the trust, like I mentioned earlier. So as an entity, you must understand that if it is integrity, from top level, almost everybody in the organization knows that what the board promises, it delivers to the staff. It knows that whoever earns anything gets it without, like I said, lobbying or asking for it. And when there are malfeasances or people come short, there are consequences. Also based on standards, not parochial interest. It goes to the public sector, it goes to the private sector. I've been in an organization where at a point in time, when I'm going to work, I feel very sad. Because lack of trust creates toxic environment, working environment. It's not healthy, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. And it has a way for the directors now, for the board, a message to them. It has a way of seeping into the corporate culture and the performance of the organization. Right? Happy staff make happy company. Happy company performs and excels and sustains.
So it's about keeping your word?
Keeping your word in one of it. Delivering the values you promise is one of it. You're keeping your word, yes. When you say you are going to do something at 10 o'clock, you do it at 10 o'clock. But part of trust is also to have standards that deliver. Because talk could be cheap. You could say something and say you can't, but how are you able to deliver it? Is by ensuring that all the things are the right place, the right tools, the right person, people, round pegs and round hole. And of course, as we are all political animals, as less office politics as possible.
Indeed. Our time is fast spent. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can talk about, but perhaps some other time. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Mallam Baba Yusuf, the CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company.
Thank you for having me.